You know what they say about burning bridges. Sometimes the bridge burns itself, and all you can do is make sure you're standing on the right side when it does. If you want to hear more stories about workplace justice and strategic comebacks, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this corporate chess game plays out. I'm Sarah Chen, 53 years old, 15 years with DataFlow Technologies, and about to get the shock of my professional life. Except it wasn't really a shock, was it? When you've been in tech, as long as I have, you develop a sixth sense for when the corporate vultures start circling. I started at DataFlow fresh out of my divorce, a single mom with a computer science degree, and more determination than sense. My daughter Emma was 8 then, and I was desperate to prove that a woman could make it in the boys' club of Silicon Valley. DataFlow was a mid-sized company, then maybe 300 employees, working on data analytics solutions for small businesses. I wasn't just an employee, I was a builder. I worked 60-hour weeks, missed school plays and soccer games, sacrificed my personal life to help build DataFlow from a scrappy startup into a billion-dollar corporation. I created their flagship product, Analyze Max, from the ground up. I wrote the original code, designed the user interface, even came up with the name. But here's the thing about corporate America: loyalty only flows one way, and I was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The meeting was supposed to be about Q2 projections. Instead, I walked into an ambush. My boss, Robert Kim, was there along with HR Director Jennifer Walsh and someone I didn't recognize, a sharp-suited man in his 30s who screamed, "Consultant." "Sarah," Robert said, not quite meeting my eyes, "we need to discuss some organizational changes." Organizational changes, corporate speak for "you're screwed." "We've decided to restructure the development team." Jennifer added, her voice artificially cheerful. "We're moving in a different direction, focusing on younger talent with fresh perspectives." Younger talent, fresh perspectives, more corporate speak for "you're too old, and we want to replace you with someone we can pay half your salary." The consultant, his name was Marcus. Something slid a folder across the mahogany table. "We're prepared to offer you a generous severance package contingent on signing this non-compete agreement." I opened the folder and nearly laughed out loud. 6 months' salary in exchange for agreeing not to work for any competitor for 2 years. They were trying to buy my silence and eliminate me as a threat for the price of a decent used car. "This is quite sudden," I said, keeping my voice level. "Can I ask what prompted this decision?" Robert shifted uncomfortably. "The board feels it's time for new leadership in the development division." "Nothing personal, Sarah, just business." "Nothing personal, just business." The battle cry of every coward who's ever stabbed someone in the back. But here's what they didn't know: I'd seen this coming for months. It started back in January, when I noticed some unusual activity around my projects. Meetings I wasn't invited to, emails I wasn't copied on, conversations that stopped when I walked into a room. Then I discovered that DataFlow had hired a consulting firm, Marcus's firm. It turned out to evaluate operational efficiency. In corporate terms, that's like hiring a hitman to evaluate your health. So I did what any smart woman would do. I started paying attention. I documented everything, every slight, every exclusion, every sign that I was being pushed out. I made copies of all my work files, backed up my emails, and started keeping a detailed journal of every interaction with management. But more importantly, I started examining my employment contracts, all of them. The original agreement from 15 years ago, the updates from my promotions, the intellectual property clauses, the non-compete restrictions. And that's when I found it, the loophole that would change everything. You see, DataFlow's IP agreement covered work done during company time, using company resources for company purposes. Standard language designed to ensure that anything I created belonged to them. But I'd been doing something they didn't know about. For the past 2 years, I'd been working on my own time, using my own equipment on improvements to Analyze Max that went far beyond what DataFlow was using. Advanced machine learning algorithms, predictive analytics, capabilities, integration protocols. that could revolutionize how businesses handle data. I called it Analyze Max 2.0, and according to my employment agreement, DataFlow had no claim to it whatsoever. So, while they were planning to push me out, I was planning something much bigger. In February, I quietly filed provisional patents for my Analyze Max 2.0 innovations, not under DataFlow's name, under mine, Sarah Chen, individual inventor holder of patents that would make their current technology look like a calculator compared to a supercomputer. I also started having conversations, quiet conversations, with competitors, headhunters, industry contacts I'd built over 15 years in the business. Not job interviews, just friendly chats about the future of data analytics, the direction of the industry, the kind of innovations that could disrupt the market. One of those conversations was with David Martinez, CEO of Technova Solutions, DataFlow's biggest competitor. David and I had known each other for years through industry conferences and professional organizations. Sarah, David said during a coffee meeting in February, hypothetically speaking, if someone had developed next-generation analytics capabilities that could leapfrog the current market leaders, what would that be worth? Hypothetically, I smiled. It would be worth everything. By March, I had 3 solid job offers, 2 licensing deals for my patents, and a plan that would turn DataFlow's betrayal into my greatest victory. So when Robert Kim and his corporate assassins ambushed me in that conference room, I was ready. I appreciate the generous offer, I said, closing the severance folder without signing it. But I'm going to have to decline. Jennifer looked confused. Sarah, I don't think you understand. This isn't really a negotiation. The decision has been made. Oh, I understand perfectly. You've decided to terminate my employment after 15 years of service. That's your right. But I'm not signing your non-compete agreement, and I'm not taking your hush money. Marcus leaned forward. Ms. Chen, you might want to reconsider. The job market for someone in your situation can be challenging. My situation? He meant my age, of course. 53 and female in tech, practically ancient by Silicon Valley standards. You know what, I said, standing up. You're absolutely right. The job market for someone in my situation is very interesting indeed. I cleaned out my office that afternoon. 15 years of my professional life, packed into 3 cardboard boxes. My team was shocked they'd had no idea what management was planning. Several of them asked if there was anything they could do, if they should speak to HR, if they could help me fight this. Don't worry about me, I told them. I'll be fine. Better than fine, actually. Emma called that evening. She's 23 now, working as a graphic designer in Portland, and she's inherited my stubborn streak. Mom, this is insane. Can't you sue them, fight back somehow? Sweetheart, sometimes the best revenge isn't fighting back. Sometimes it's moving forward. What does that mean? It means your old mom has a few tricks up her sleeve. The next morning, DataFlow sent out an internal memo announcing my departure. Standard corporate boilerplate about pursuing new opportunities and grateful for her contributions. They probably thought that was the end of the story. They were wrong. That same morning, Technova Solutions issued a press release announcing their new Chief Technology Officer, Sarah Chen, former lead developer at DataFlow Technologies, holder of multiple patents in advanced data analytics and architect of the next generation of business intelligence software. The tech blogs picked it up within hours. DataFlow loses key talent to competitor. Industry veteran joins Technova with revolutionary technology. The patent portfolio that could reshape data analytics. But the real bombshell came 3 days later when Technova announced their new product, Nova Analyze Pro, powered by proprietary algorithms that made existing solutions look obsolete. My algorithms, my patents, my 15 years of experience and innovation, now working for DataFlow's biggest competitor. Robert Kim called me personally. Sarah, we need to talk. There might have been some misunderstanding about your departure. No misunderstanding, Robert. You made it very clear that you wanted fresh perspectives and younger talent. Well, congratulations. You got exactly what you asked for. Look, maybe we can work something out. Maybe there's a place for you here after all. Robert, I appreciate the call, but I'm very happy where I am. Technova values experience and innovation. They understand that wisdom isn't something you can outsource to a consulting firm. Within a month, 3 more senior developers had left DataFlow for competitors. The brain drain was accelerating, and DataFlow's stock price was reflecting investor concerns about their ability to compete in the rapidly evolving market. Meanwhile, Nova Analyze Pro was getting rave reviews from beta testers. The product was everything I'd envisioned: faster, smarter, more intuitive than anything currently on the market. Pre-orders were exceeding projections by 300%. Technova's stock price rose 40% in 6 weeks. But the real satisfaction came when I learned what was happening inside DataFlow. The development team was struggling without institutional knowledge. Projects were behind schedule. The fresh perspectives they'd hired to replace me were discovering that building enterprise software isn't something you learn from YouTube tutorials. Marcus, the consultant, was brought back to assess the situation. His assessment, according to my sources still inside the company, was that DataFlow had made a strategic error in their personnel decisions. Strategic error, corporate speak for "we screwed up royally." Jennifer Walsh from HR reached out through LinkedIn, asking if I'd be interested in returning as a consultant. I politely declined, mentioning that my non-compete agreement with Technova prevented me from working with competitors. The irony was delicious. 6 months after my dismissal, DataFlow announced their Q3 earnings. Revenue was down 15%, development costs were up 30%, and they were losing market share to competitors, particularly Technova Solutions. Robert Kim was stepping down to pursue other opportunities. Corporate speak for the board fired him. The new CEO, Patricia Williams, was someone I knew from my early days in the industry. She called me personally. "Sarah, I want to apologize for how you were treated. What happened to you was unconscionable, and it's cost this company dearly." "I appreciate that, Patricia, but honestly, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Would you consider coming back? We could make you CTO, give you equity, whatever it takes." "Patricia, I'm flattered, but I'm exactly where I belong. Technova appreciates what I bring to the table. They value experience over youth, innovation over politics, and results over corporate games." "I understand, but if you ever change your mind..." "I won't, but thank you." That same week, Technova announced that Nova Analyze Pro had captured 25% of the enterprise analytics market in its first 6 months. We were the fastest growing product in the company's history. David Martinez promoted me to Chief Innovation Officer and gave me a team of 30 developers to work on next-generation solutions. My salary was double what I'd been making at DataFlow, plus equity that was already worth more than my entire 401k. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was proving that experience matters, that loyalty should be reciprocated, and that underestimating a woman with 15 years of knowledge and a grudge is a very expensive mistake. See the industry recognition that followed. A year after leaving DataFlow, I was invited to speak at TechCrunch Disrupt about innovation in data analytics. The audience was packed with industry leaders, venture capitalists, and startup founders, including several people from DataFlow. A year ago, I told the audience, I was told that the industry needed fresh perspectives and younger talent. I was told that my 15 years of experience was less valuable than a consultant's assessment of operational efficiency. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. But here's what I learned. Innovation doesn't come from age or youth. It comes from curiosity, persistence, and the willingness to challenge assumptions. It comes from understanding that your most valuable assets aren't your buildings or your equipment. They're the people who walk through your doors every day with ideas, experience, and the passion to solve problems. I looked directly at Robert Kim, who was sitting in the third row. When companies treat their people as disposable resources, they don't just lose employees, they lose institutional knowledge, customer relationships, and competitive advantages that took years to build. They lose the very foundation that made them successful in the first place. The applause was thunderous. After my talk, a young woman approached me, probably 25, with the eager enthusiasm I remembered from my own early career. "Ms. Chen, I'm about to graduate with my CS degree, and I'm terrified about entering this industry. How do I protect myself from what happened to you?" I smiled. "Sweetheart, you don't protect yourself from it. You prepare for it. You document everything, you keep learning. You build relationships, and you never ever let anyone convince you that your experience doesn't matter. And most importantly, you remember that every ending is also a beginning." Emma was right. I did have tricks up my sleeve. But the biggest trick was something I'd learned from my own experience. The best revenge isn't just success, it's sharing that success with others. I started a mentorship program at Technova for women over 40 in tech. We called it the Second Act Initiative, and it focused on helping experienced women navigate career transitions, patent their innovations, and negotiate from positions of strength. Within 6 months, we had 50 participants. Within a year, we had partnerships with 3 other companies and had helped 12 women start their own businesses using their previously undervalued expertise. One of our success stories was Linda Rodriguez, a 48-year-old database architect who'd been restructured out of her position at a major financial services company. Linda had developed fraud detection algorithms that were saving her former employer millions of dollars annually, but she'd never been properly credited or compensated for her work. We helped Linda patent her improvements, negotiate a licensing deal, and launch her own cybersecurity consulting firm. Last month, her former employer became her biggest client, paying her more in consulting fees than they'd paid her in salary for 5 years. "Sarah," Linda told me, "you didn't just help me find a new job, you helped me find my value." That's when I realized that my real victory wasn't beating DataFlow. It was proving that experience, wisdom, and strategic thinking are more powerful than corporate politics and age discrimination. 2 years after my departure from DataFlow, I received an unexpected email. It was from Marcus, the consultant, who delivered my termination notice. "Ms. Chen," he wrote, "I hope you remember me from your transition meeting at DataFlow. I wanted to reach out because I'm starting my own consulting firm, and I'd like to focus on helping companies retain and value their experienced talent rather than discarding it. Would you be willing to have coffee and share your perspective on what companies get wrong about workforce management?" I stared at that email for a full 5 minutes. Marcus, the corporate assassin, who'd tried to buy my silence for 6 months' salary, was asking me for advice on how to help companies avoid making the mistakes DataFlow had made. We met at a Starbucks in downtown Seattle. Marcus looked different, less polished, more genuine. The cocky consultant swagger was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. "I owe you an apology," he said before I could even sit down. "What happened to you at DataFlow was wrong, and I was part of it." "What changed your mind?" Watching what happened afterward, DataFlow lost not just you, but institutional knowledge, market position, and credibility. They're still struggling to recover. Meanwhile, you've become one of the most respected innovators in the industry. I realized I was on the wrong side of history. I sipped my coffee and studied this man who'd once tried to silence me with a non-compete agreement. "Marcus, the problem isn't just age discrimination. It's the entire mentality that treats people as interchangeable parts instead of unique assets. When you fire someone with 15 years of experience, you're not just losing an employee, you're losing relationships, insights, problem-solving abilities, and institutional memory that can't be replaced by hiring someone younger and cheaper." How do I help companies understand that? You start by changing the conversation. Instead of talking about operational efficiency and restructuring, you talk about knowledge retention and competitive advantage. You help them understand that their most experienced employees aren't costs to be minimized, they're investments that appreciate over time. Marcus took notes like his life depended on it. Would you consider working with me on this, not as an employee?" He added quickly, "But as a partner. Your credibility and experience combined with my access to corporate decision makers could actually change how companies think about their workforce." I thought about it. The idea of working with the man who'd tried to destroy my career had a certain poetic justice to it. "Send me a proposal," I said. "But understand, if we do this, we do it my way. No corporate doublespeak, no euphemisms, no pretending that age discrimination doesn't exist. We tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable." Today, 3 years after DataFlow tried to dispose of me, like yesterday's technology, I'm sitting in my corner office at Technova, looking out at the Seattle skyline and reflecting on how much has changed. Nova, Analyze Pro, now controls 40% of the enterprise analytics market. My patent portfolio has generated over $50 million in licensing revenue. The Second Act initiative has helped 200 women turn their experience into entrepreneurial success. And DataFlow, they're still struggling. They've gone through 3 CEOs, lost half their market share, and are rumored to be exploring acquisition offers. The fresh perspectives they hired to replace me have mostly moved on to other companies, taking their brief tenure and shallow knowledge with them. But you know what? I don't feel vindicated anymore. I feel grateful. Grateful that their betrayal forced me to discover my own value. Grateful that their short-sightedness opened doors I never would have walked through otherwise. Grateful that their attempt to silence me gave me a platform to speak for others who've been underestimated and discarded. Emma called me last week with exciting news. She's been promoted to creative director at her design firm, and she's the youngest person ever to hold that position. "Mom," she said, "I keep thinking about what happened to you at DataFlow. It was horrible, but it led to everything good that came after. Do you think everything happens for a reason?" "I think we make reasons out of everything that happens, sweetheart. The important thing isn't what happens to us, it's what we choose to do with what happens to us." "You chose to fight back." "No, honey, I chose to move forward. There's a difference." And there is a difference. Fighting back keeps you focused on the past, on the people who wronged you, on the injustice of what happened. Moving forward keeps you focused on the future, on the opportunities ahead, on the value you can create, and the people you can help. That folder Marcus slid across the table 3 years ago, the one with the insulting severance offer and the restrictive non-compete agreement, is framed on my office wall now, not as a reminder of how I was wronged, but as a reminder of how much I was worth. They offered me 6 months' salary to disappear quietly. Instead, I built a career worth millions and a reputation that will outlast any corporate restructuring. They thought they were ending my story. Instead, they were just helping me turn the page to a much better chapter. If you've ever been told you're too old, too experienced, too expensive, or too inconvenient for someone else's vision of the future, let me tell you something. They're not evaluating your worth, they're revealing their own limitations. Your experience isn't a liability, it's an asset. Your knowledge isn't outdated, it's foundational. Your wisdom isn't obsolete, it's irreplaceable. And sometimes, the best thing that can happen to you is being set free from people who don't understand your value. Because when you know your worth, the whole world becomes your marketplace. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories about turning professional setbacks into personal comebacks. Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens when experience meets opportunity and wisdom meets determination. The corporate world tried to write me off. Instead, I rewrote the rules. And that, my friends, is a story worth telling.